Hi, Lawrence LeBrocq, Managing Partner of Garces, Grabler LeBrocq. Welcome to Victim to Victory, the authority in personal injury. Today we're going to be discussing workplace injuries, commonly known as workers' compensation, and today we have one of the top attorneys in the state on workers' compensation, Victor Broccoli. Welcome to the show, Vic.
Hi, pleasure to be here today.
It's great to have you here. Now, at GGL, we concentrate on injury law, whether somebody's injured at work, injured in an automobile collision, construction, different types of cases. So just tell us a little bit about what workers' compensation is and what are some of the common mistakes or misconceptions people have that are injured on the job.
Sure. So in New Jersey, we have a system of workers' compensation law. It is designed to compensate injured workers, people that are injured in the course and scope of their employment. Broadly speaking, it guarantees injured workers three rights. Number one, provides the medical treatment provided by the employer. However, in New Jersey, the employer typically has the right to control and direct treatment, meaning they get to pick the doctors. Right. Second is if a person is injured and because of their injuries they're unable to work, they're entitled to what we call temporary total disability benefits. Typically, it's wage replacement. Last but not least, they're entitled to some measure of what we call partial permanent disability, compensation for how much their injury impairs them in their ability to work or enjoy their activities of daily living as a result of their injuries. So those are their rights as an injured worker, at least in the state of New Jersey.
So what are some of the mistakes that people make, or what should they do immediately after being injured on the job? And people don't realize you can be injured on a job if you're in an automobile collision as well. So what should somebody do if they're injured on the job?
The biggest mistake that I see when somebody's injured on the job is that they don't report it adequately. That is the biggest headache that I deal with. It is the biggest headache, the thing that I'm always trying to untangle when something goes wrong. If you get hurt on the job, you tell your supervisor, you report it. More importantly, you don't just tell them in passing, oh yeah, I got hurt. You report it, you document that you've told your supervisor, text message, email, something reproducible. A lot of times the employer will do the right thing. They'll write a report. They'll report it to the insurance company. But a lot of times I'll talk to clients and the employer has not done the right thing. They'll blow somebody off. They won't provide medical treatment. And then if they come to a lawyer well after the fact, it then becomes a battle of, was this reported in enough time? Did this injury even happen? And that initial report of accident in the days or even weeks after the injury occurred can be the difference between getting somebody compensation and failing to get them compensation.
So people sometimes don't understand that if they are injured in an automobile collision and they're working, that they still need to report that to an employer. I hear all the time, "Oh, I don't want to assume my job. I don't want to report that." But they don't realize that their medical bills are going to be paid through workers' comp. Let's talk a little bit about primacy of coverage and how that works.
Sure. So if you get into a car accident while you're driving in your job, right? So biggest thing I can think of would be somebody who is a delivery driver who is driving. Ordinarily, if you get into a regular car accident, you're not in the course of your work, it gets paid through your regular auto insurance, through PIP. But if it's work-related, you don't have the ability to go through your own auto insurance. It is going to go through your workers' compensation insurance. So again, you have to report it. It needs to be reported. And even just the act of, okay, my employer's vehicle is damaged. They know that there's property damage to the vehicle. That doesn't always register, hi, I'm injured and I need medical treatment, because oftentimes the company that's insuring the physical vehicle is not the same as the one that's providing workers' compensation insurance. So there's different insurance companies that can get lost in the shuffle, which is why reporting early on is very, very important.
Now, at GGL, we're known for preparing every case for trial. That's whether it's a personal injury case or a workers' compensation case. And now, a little bit of your mentor, my partner, Bill Grabler, 40 years in the comp, and he is a bulldog. He's a very, very aggressive comp attorney. How does that play out with the reputation of GGL and your reputation as a litigator for GGL in the workers' comp space?
So the biggest thing is that, number one, insurance companies know that our cases are well prepared. They know that they're well medically documented. They know that clients are getting appropriate medical treatment and the cases are well documented from a medical perspective. And because of that, it allows us to drive value for clients. It allows us to drive the best possible settlements. It also signals that, hey, if we're not going to get appropriate compensation for somebody, we will take a case to trial and we will deliver in the courtroom if that's where it needs to go. So we have that reputation in the courtroom. We have that reputation in, with insurance companies, and it allows us to really drive excellent results for our clients.
Right. And that shows in the referrals that we receive from big firms like Morgan & Morgan and Finkelstein & Partners, which is really Jacoby & Myers, owned by Andrew Finkelstein, who refer us their workers' compensation in Jersey. Just goes to show the great reputation you and the rest of the comp lawyers have at GGL. Now, speaking of our great reputation, tell everybody about why are we an authority in the industry and about the CLEs that we do and the presentations that are being done by you and Mike Tomasino at the workers' comp events.
Sure. So Mike and I, for the last 2 years, have put on for New Jersey ICL, we've put on basically all-day CLEs where we bring in a variety of doctors, experts, other attorneys, where we really kind of go into, we call it practical skills, where we really go into advanced techniques for attorneys. And it really, we get really good doctors and medical experts in that go into testimony and really advanced medical techniques. This year, what we really focused on is something that really kind of turned myself into, which is really kind of practical applications of AI specifically in workers' compensation law. One of the things that we've really driven this year has been, like we talk about like AI in the law, has been not so much like, okay, like we hear about it, but how are we actually applying it and using it? And really with our department, what we've gotten into this year is actually building software to automate certain tasks, automate certain things that we're building from scratch that allow us to really drive outcomes, because we're able to take certain things and certain tasks and automate them, and it makes moving cases along easier because we're able to take things off of our staff's plates and take things off of our attorneys' plates, make our lives easier. It makes handling cases easier for people. And then it's kind of nice because we're able to show that off a little bit. Just here, these are the things that we're doing, and it allows us to kind of position ourselves as the experts in the field that we are.
Right, because you guys are experts in workers' compensation, handling well in excess of 4,000 cases in the firm, and just maybe the largest workers' compensation practice in the state of New Jersey. So I commend that entire department. I'm proud to have you guys on with GGL. It's really incredible. So tell us a little bit about how we fight for the clients. You can give us an example of a case if you like, but what I love is that you guys do motions for Med Temp. Could you explain what a motion for Med Temp is and why that's so important?
Sure. So one of the procedural rules in workers' compensation is what we call a motion for Med Temp. Someone is not getting appropriate medical treatment. We build the case up medically. We get a doctor that will say, our client is in need of this medical treatment. We have a report. It causally relates whatever the medical condition is, whatever medical treatment is needed. If the person's out of work, they have a need for temporary disability, and we go into court and we demand that the judge orders this medical treatment. If they're out of work, order temporary disability. Most of the times when we're trying cases, it's not over the partial permanency at the end, how much money is at the end. Most of our trials are over medical benefits and temporary disability.
Sure.
Like, those are really most of my trials.
And that's a big problem because, as you said earlier, and just want to make sure all of our guests are understanding that the defense, or in a case of workers' comp, the respondent, the people that represent the employer are the ones who get to choose the doctors. The injured person or petitioner does not choose their own doctor. They're sent to a doctor by the respondent or the defendant representing the employer.
That's our system in Jersey. So the motion for Med Temp, in addition to making sure that our client is getting appropriate medical treatment is also, to a certain extent, our ability to try to take control of that medical treatment, get our clients to doctors that we know are going to give our client a fair shake. It allows us to kind of even the playing field there to a certain extent, and allows us to really go to bat. Oftentimes, the cases that we're filing those motions on are those cases, kind of going back to the very beginning, are the ones where maybe there wasn't an initial report of an injury, where the insurance company is saying, well, this accident didn't even happen. There's no report. So a lot of times that's where we're having to take our client and put him into court to tell a judge or convince the judge, this accident happened, it's real, the pain is real, the injuries are real, and it happened this way. So that's a lot of times, that's our client's ability that's their day in court to tell the judge, this is how it happened, this is my pain, and that's really our opportunity to go to court and to shine for our clients.
Can you give us an example of a case where you really shined, you went over and above for a client and got a great result in a case that didn't really look like it was going to be successful?
So it was a pretty sad one. This one, and I'll be specific with dates because it's important to kind of understand the story. This is back in February of 2022, because we had a very, very nice woman walk into our office. She comes in and tells us that her husband had passed away, and she wasn't very clear on how or why it happened. All it was that her husband worked at it was a recycling factory, and that her husband might have been exposed to some kind of cancer and wasn't sure what happened. She had gone to a couple other law firms that had just rejected the case, didn't even look at any medical records. And I said February 2022 because, as you know, COVID happened March of 2020.
Right.
We have a 2-year statute of limitations. And I had asked her, by any chance, did he have COVID? And she said, I don't know, maybe. And I'm like, here's what I want you to do. Where was he hospitalized? And she told me where. I said, I want you to go get the medical records and bring them to me immediately. Just go get them, whatever I'm doing, come in, I'm going to look at them. So she comes back about a week later with a CD with, I think it was about 6,000 pages of medical records. True to my word, drop what I'm doing, come into my office. We look at all 6,000 pages of medical records. It was a COVID case. And furthermore, the statute on that was going to run in about 4 or 5 days from the point that she was in my office.
Meaning a statute, you cannot sue after the statute passes. So if it's a 2-year statute of limitations and it's 2 years and a day, you can't file suit. That case is forever closed.
And so in New Jersey, if somebody dies as a result of their work-related injury, and back for certain periods during COVID, you could file a claim should your job title be within what we called an essential worker during certain periods of time. We filed that case right on the edge of the statute of limitations, a case that a couple of other firms had just rejected without any sort of medical records review or anything. We took in because we listened, and as a result, we were able to secure a very large settlement for our client for something because we took the time to listen early on to somebody who wasn't even our client and didn't really have a clear understanding of even why, unfortunately, her husband had passed away. So we were able to really drive a really good result because we took the time to listen and really kind of went above and beyond early on for somebody who wasn't even our client at that point.
Well, not only does it show that you went above and beyond, but it shows the compassion and empathy that you had for this woman who had lost her husband, and it took the time and cared enough to really listen and pay attention. So that's a great win. So what does it mean? I know you came up from North Carolina about a decade ago, right?
Longer than that. I'm getting a little old, but my first 2 years of practice was in rural North Carolina, Rutherfordton, North Carolina.
Okay. And you come up here to New Jersey. How has the practice changed since you started practicing in the workers' comp space?
Well, so it's changed. Workers' comp has changed insofar as, one, we were talking about COVID for a minute. It is more of a remote digital practice, right? I remember before COVID, I used to have to cover multiple courts, and I would drive around from I was covering courts all the way from Hackensack down to Camden. I mean, I was driving throughout the state to go from court appearance to court appearance. And since COVID and, basically it transitioning to, I think, kind of like a more of a remote practice, we don't really do that as much. And it's more of a, you're going to court to try cases.
Sure.
So there's a lot of changes in kind of, I would say, kind of the efficiencies there. You do have to kind of then turn around and change kind of the way that you learn. It used to be you'd kind of sit in court and you'd watch attorneys in how they would interact and how they would argue cases. You do lose that to a certain extent.
Right.
So you have to kind of build in the ways with, how you learn and how you grow and how you watch people. But you do become a lot more efficient. You do have to become a lot more digitally oriented, digitally native, which, again, we do really, really well. You kind of mentioned North Carolina. I spent my first 2 years out in rural North Carolina, and I would say like the one big similarity was it was a very kind of like small community where, your reputation would carry you very far. And that in workers' comp, because it is a relatively small community of attorneys and judges and practitioners, you do have to, again, your reputation does kind of continue to go, in front of you. Like you have a reputation for being organized and diligent. You can have a reputation for not being those things. So it's always kind of a conscious choice to, keep your reputation.
Right. And that's so important in the workers' comp space because there's not a changing jury. Like in your personal injury cases, it's a different jury every case you try. Even though the judges are the same when you're in workers' comp, you're always trying a case in front of a judge, and a lot of times the same judge in that county.
Yeah, like you're in front of kind of similar judges and kind of like a similar pool. So, you best come correct.
Right. Well, tell us a little bit about some of the things that GGL is doing in the state, and other than doing the ICL courses, which is continuing legal education, what are some of the other things that we're doing to get involved in the workers' compensation community?
Well, I said a lot of the things, it is kind of with continuing education. We do a lot of that. I said a lot of it is just kind of making sure that we're out there in the community. Right. We really do a lot of, it's just kind of making sure that we're there really statewide. Like we have attorneys that are covering essentially every single vicinage and are appearing in every single court on basically a daily basis. Right.
So we cover the entire state of New Jersey, which is incredible. I'm very proud to be aligned with that. So that's fantastic. So what else can you tell us about the reputation and how the reputation has grown since you've been with the firm?
So the big thing I would say reputationally is over the last few years, just one, we handle a lot of cases, and two, just the attorneys that we have. I mean, our bench of workers' comp attorneys, I think that we're just the best in the state. We just have a bunch of we just have a bunch of 3 and 4 hitters. Right. I mean, everybody from top to bottom. I mean, between Bill, Mike, Tom, Sandra, Ryan up in Hackensack. I mean, we're just everybody is really, really darn good at what they do. They're well respected in the state. They're well respected in front of judges. They're well respected, and they all just drive really good results. They're just really good.
And also, what's the difference in how you prepare a catastrophic case from a minor injury?
So, catastrophic. Okay. Let me start with kind of a minor case, right? Because it's kind of easier to think about it that way. It's always on every single case before I make a demand, like literally everything except if my client has passed away. I have a conversation with somebody. How has this injury affected you? I will go through everything. I want to know your pain scale. I want to know every activity of daily living. I want to know how it's affected your ability to work. I will do that on anything that is north of a paper cut, right? So for something that is a minor case, I want to make sure that you've gotten appropriate imaging. I want to make sure you've been evaluated by appropriate specialists. If it's something small where genuinely this happened and I'm perfectly fine, that's great. But I want to make sure that before I've made a demand and before I'm looking to settle your case, that I know that about you, that I will talk to every single client about that before we make a decision to settle it, or we make a decision to make sure that you're evaluated by other specialists. We do that every single case before I make any sort of decision to move towards settlement, we do that every single case. Then we get into kind of the catastrophic cases, the major ones. There we're really documenting how employable is this person post-injury? What kind of return, what kind of work are you able to do? What is your life like now? And you can really get into, is this person going to be totally disabled for the rest of their life? Is it feasible for that person to be totally disabled? Because sometimes when we talk about somebody who's totally disabled, we're talking about them being paid 70% of what they were making for the rest of their life and being foreclosed upon from being able to work for the rest of their life, which New Jersey is an expensive state. That's a strategic decision because sometimes people can't really live off of that. So there's a lot of decisions that go into the catastrophic cases on what we're going to do and how we're going to settle those cases. So a lot of it is really just understanding this injury's happened to you. What are the effects it's had upon you and how has it affected your life? And those questions and those threads are really true on the small cases and the large cases alike.
Now I'm going to ask you an open-ended question for you. You were sent a questionnaire that you filled out, and you worked diligently this weekend to prepare for the podcast, and then I wrote up a page of my own questions to ask you.
Yeah.
So now, is there anything that we haven't talked about that you really like to share with our audience to tell them who you are or what GGL is all about?
I mean, to be honest, we ended up kind of working in a pretty good amount of it. I mean, the really interesting thing about working at GGL and working in our workers' compensation department is just the wealth of experience that we have. And you said every attorney in our comp department has been doing this for a pretty long time. And because of that, you have the ability to bounce off of one another. You can bounce cases, you can bounce ideas off of one another, and you grow that way. Like, when I started here, this was 2021, I thought I was good. And just the amount of growth that I know that I've had personally in the last 5 years, I mean, it's just astronomical because you're in that environment of you're surrounded by really good attorneys, a lot of good, interesting cases. You just grow as an attorney and you're surrounded by really good staff and resources that allow you to not worry so much about, okay, are the P's and Q's being handled, and allows you to really focus on driving really good client outcomes and allows you to start kind of thinking about things systemically and how to kind of really drive those things, like drive really good client outcomes. And then for me, that then allows me to then start thinking about things on like a much kind of higher systemic level, and then allows you to start kind of going, all right, how can we start writing software to start really trying to like implement those like best practices and even just kind of automate those things and then make it even easier on my staff and just kind of let those things kind of recurse.
And some people are afraid of AI. AI is a tool. So many people
is.
are afraid, AI is going to replace my job. They're going to replace attorneys. No, what AI is going to do, it's going to replace. Law firms that don't use AI are going to be replaced by law firms that do because they're going to have such an advantage over those other law firms.
Yeah, it's a tool. And honestly, kind of the use of it that again, like we're embracing it, but it's kind of like the higher level stuff, right? You tend to use it at kind of like the lower parts of a file where it's like the most useful, right? The same repetitive work. Like if you look at like the parts of a file or tasks where somebody's doing the same things over and over and over again, where it doesn't require thought and it's just taking time, you can systematize those things and you can automate those things away and you take them off your staff's plate, and it allows them the ability to then use their time and efforts on higher level tasks and higher level thought. It's the whole idea is increase everybody's capacity. You know, the one thing that we can't make more of is time. And the idea is to give ourselves more time to be able to drive better outcomes. And that's really kind of the whole MO on kind of what we're building.
Right. Now, you've been with the firm for over 5 years. So what does GGL wins mean to you?
I think it's just every day trying to build better. Like, I just think about where we were when at least when I started and when I walked in the door, which was it was a really, really darn good department. And I think about where we are now. I just think about continuous improvement, continuously getting better. And that's just kind of that's what I think about as far as winning.
It's perfect. Victor, thank you for being here. Appreciate you. Appreciate you as an attorney with the firm and as a person. It's great to have you here.